Okay. Try to hear what people have to say. Most of the time they're beggars, but you just might find a treasure. So keep your ears wide open like an ocean when you pray, and try to hear what people have to say.
Our trail to Texas began at the Republican Party convention in Philadelphia, where labor and community activists poured into the streets in protest. And then, on to Los Angeles. We're here at the Democratic National Convention speaking with delegates about their issues of concern, about how we can change America.
There's a lot of different parts to America. And if you don't include all the parts, how can you change it?
Just so the kids know what it is that they're growing up to vote for.
We're out there making sure that everybody's registered so they'll have an opportunity to exercise their freedom to vote.
People vote if they know what's at stake. And who would know better about Bush than Texans? You're from Bush's hometown.
Yes. He claims that and started out there in Texas, in Midland, Texas, in the oil industry. He sticks to the rich and powerful, and the rest of us have to fend for ourselves. He is so anti-worker and anti-labor, he's one of the worst governors we've ever had in that respect.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
All right, thank you. We'll call you when we get to Texas.
Okay.
The trail starts in George W.'s hometown of Midland.
Many a man been on the road I've been. One time I hopped a freight, I was running from my fate, but the long arm of the law was faster than I've ever been. Oh, many a man been on the road I've been.
We talked to some lifelong residents about George W.'s hometown.
Can I interview him? No.
Having childcare in the workplace would be beneficial to a lot of people.
I think a lot of people have, I guess, would be financial. Lots of people, you always hear a lot of people having financial problems.
The astounding cost of medicine and doctors at this time are just horrendous. And I think there should be something that could be incorporated to help the people of lower incomes.
My family's been out here since about 1932, and it's a very up and down existence. Midland, Odessa, the West Texas area, oil industry has pretty much dominated this area ever since its founding. Now, he grew up in Midland, and he had, before he got into Harvard somehow or other, and went off to prep school, he did spend a lot of time growing up in Midland. Oh, I think that's what Bushes do when they turn 30-something, is they go look for an office to run for. He never really had, very much the same problem he's having in the presidential campaign right now. He never had any real rationale as to why he should be a congressman other than his daddy had been a congressman.
What was it that defeated George W. in his congressional race?
He was the outsider coming in town to take over. And also there was a little bit of a jealousy factor. I mean, he moved to town and moved to go into the oil business without knowing anything about the oil business, was able to move into the guest house of a family whose forebears founded Humble Oil, which of course is now Exxon, and immediately had access to every investor in the country and all the things that the other guys around here didn't have. And the instructive thing about it is he had all that access and he still never found any oil except unless it was in the auto department at Walmart.
Who are the people, who are the money people who supported his race for governor?
A lot of them are right here. Oil company, corporations, big corporations in general. They were not so much interested in what he was going to do as governor as they were interested in the presidential race 4 years down the road. He was from the oil industry, and that he would be supportive of the oil industry, and that was kind of the campaign pitch that he made. They've got a horrible platform. On labor issues, George Bush is totally against the right of workers to organize. He hates unions so bad that you can't believe. This election could be for a lifetime. It's a very crucial election. If the media will actually discuss the issues like they ought to out here, the people would really know what the differences are between the two candidates.
On to the state capitol, where we spoke to folks who faced off with the governor on policy issues affecting Texans and working families across the country.
Governor Bush has been the most dangerous politician I've known in my lifetime, and that's been active since 1962. He's got a pleasant appearance, he's got a Boy Scout smile, but he's got a mean streak as broad as he is tall. If you ever cross him, you're going to pay for it, and the workers are paying for it because we stand up for what's right. He is for a minimum wage as long as every state has the right to opt out. Now, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that if every state has a right to opt out, we would diminish the minimum wage. So it's a clever way to sound like he's for it and be against it. And again, that's his ability. And he would say to me, and did say to me, I'm not going to let the right wing drag me off to the right. But then he would go sup with them, and they would discuss policies. And he would give me small talk and them policy talk. And I say that that's where the Newt Gingriches and this type of people fit in well with him. You can look at his eyes and tell it's the George Bush eyes, the George Bush face. We didn't have a big enough screen to paint the real George Bush's nose.
That's the first day of the Texas Freedom Network's existence.
It's worse than I imagined.
The next note said, "Where's our side?" And the response was, "It's you and me."
Oh, that's precious.
There are a number of dangers presented to average working American families by the religious right. The religious right movement, while claiming to be pro-family, has in fact opposed on down the line just about every measure for children, particularly children of low-income families, from funding for child care, to even things like home-based child abuse prevention programs, immunization programs, and public education. The religious right has made great gains in Texas in fighting more programs for kids. We don't hear very much about the fact that the religious right has taken over most of the state-level Republican parties in the United States, and that they have numerous high-level elected officials committed to implementing their agenda. They endorsed Governor Bush very early in this campaign and have vigorously supported his election. In Texas, even though we have a strong spirit of independence and tradition of not relying on government, nobody in Texas wants the government to mess with public education. Public support for an issue like that has been overwhelmingly on the progressive side once people get the information about what the issue would mean for their own neighborhood school, their child's school. Even though the religious right is strong here, and even though our political leaders of late have really towed an ultra-conservative line, there's a lot of support in grassroots Texas for more progressive policies.
Differences do exist on how to run Texas, so we stopped by to talk to campaign volunteers at the Bush National Campaign Headquarters. It wasn't as easy as we thought. No, we didn't ask for the governor. We just wanted to talk to campaign workers. They kept us waiting, and eventually They turned us away.
Please do not be showing me.
So we moved on.
He's given 2 inaugural addresses and 3 State of the State addresses. His 5 major speeches to the Texas legislature, and if you do a word search on the computer on those speeches, you find the word health one time, and it's talking about a healthy business climate. He's never talked about health care. He never gave a public policy speech on health care until he ran for president. Well, I took on Governor Bush on access to health care for kids. We have 1.4 million children in Texas that don't have health insurance. We had the opportunity this last legislative session through the Children's Health Insurance Initiative passed by the Clinton-Gore administration federally to cover 500,000 of those children. George W. Bush set out from the beginning of covering only half of those kids. We, the legislature, said no, we're going to cover every kid possible. We have the money to do it in this state. We can do it, and we did it to 200% of poverty. And Governor Bush was so out front on it now. He's saying, oh, look, we've covered 500,000 kids in Texas. He wouldn't even give us a public bill signing because he didn't want anybody to know that he was having to cover 250,000 more kids in Texas because he was afraid that the conservative Republicans would get ticked off at him in the Republican primaries this past spring. So George W. Bush, when he has said in this campaign that leave no children behind, he's lying. He left them behind. We affectionately say that the W in George W. Bush in Texas stands for Waldo, as in where's Waldo, because he's never been there on any policy issue that we care about.
During the Republican convention, Colin Powell made a statement that when affirmative action ended in Texas, George Bush guaranteed that minority children would be accepted in college in the 10% graduating class plan. That was my legislation. George Bush had absolutely nothing to do with it. He didn't call me, he didn't write me, he didn't testify before committee. Now they're trying to take credit for something someone else did. That's one. 2, you will remember the horrible tragedy of the African-American man who was dragged to death by 2 racists. Because of that and several other factors in the state of Texas, we introduced hate crime legislation, enhancing the penalty for that type of a crime. It passed the House, but the Republicans wouldn't even give us a vote on the Senate floor. And where was George Bush? Nowhere. If you look at the governor of Texas, you will see that the governor of Texas, regardless of who they are, is a weak position. One of the few things they can do is make appointments to boards and commissions. He made such appointments, for example, like to the Health Commission, Ruin Archer, who said Hispanic teenagers were pregnant because the Latino community liked that. Number 2, you had people like Charles Williams, who was appointed to the TCLOS, law enforcement teaching, who said that referred to African Americans as porch monkeys. Those are facts. It's out there for people to see.
You cannot escape the facts of life in Houston, a city shaped by Bush's policy choices on housing, healthcare, and the criminal justice system.
A lot of people are politically involved in this area because this is probably one of the largest minority areas in the entire city of Houston. Fifth Ward, very old, has a legend of its own, I'd say.
Does AFSCME Local 1550 have members in the Fifth Ward?
We have many, many members in the Fifth Ward area who, many live here and some work here. We have schools here. One of the county hospitals that serves the indigent is located over here in Fifth Ward. It's one of the finest trauma hospitals in the country. But when it comes to servicing people, it's overloaded. You got people who just need a few minutes of a doctor's time, a few minutes to be seen or cared for, and it doesn't happen. Used to have a lot of school-based clinics for the children. That's being discontinued, obviously by the state. The children as a result, they're suffering. And the area is being rapidly taken away from the people who lived here, as opposed to fixing it up and helping them. This city is becoming non-accessible to the working class. All the things that they're building, they're doing it for the people with money. They are creating an economic apartheid right here in this city. What happened to the dream? What happened to Dr. King's dream? Well, we are the dream, and we can make it work for us through voting, through putting the right people in office, and through recognizing the wrong people who are in office. Governor Bush is totally about Governor Bush and Associates. I think maybe that's the way he should change his campaign slogan, Bush and Associates for president. They got it their way, you know, and forget the rest of the population. It's Bush and Associates, making the country better for them.
Right now, all of the district court judges and all of the county court judges are of one party, the Republican Party. Harris County, we're a state. It ranks third behind the states of Texas and Virginia in the number of executions that they've carried out since 1982. Our prisons are overflowing here in Texas. We currently have 150,000 people in the Texas jails and prisons. That is 3 times the number that we had just 7 years ago in 1993. And we've loaded up the jail cells that we've built over the last 7 years. We can't just keep building and building and building.
What's happening in Texas would spread across the United States in regard to the death penalty. We've had so many executions in this state, 144 executions just while Bush has been governor. This thing is really pushed to a great extent by politicians like Bush, who use the death penalty to try to show people they're tough on crime. But it's really a false argument. We have more people in prison in Texas than any other state in the union. And that's that same mentality, that right-wing conservative mentality that thinks the answer to crime is incarceration and execution rather than prevention. We need to be working on prevention.
We have the most prisons in this state, the most prisoners, and the less money spent on education. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I mean, let's build more prisons to put people away that we left behind when we could have spent less money getting them an education so they wouldn't have to be on the streets.
The school situation. He goes around acting like he knows something about education and like he has some kind of a plan. And all he does is just raise standards and lower resources so that the schools are worse off all the time.
How would you describe Governor Bush's attitude towards workers?
Well, any worker in general it isn't good, but especially if you happen to be a minority and an immigrant. First of all, under his watch, the Texas Department of Public Safety issued an edict saying that you could not get a driver's license unless you had a Social Security card, in an effort to, I guess, stem the illegal alien, as it were, from getting a driver's license. Well, what that does, it automatically makes criminals out of these people. If they can't get a driver's license, they can't buy insurance. So it puts the rest of the public at risk if you get hit by someone that has no insurance. They can't open up a bank account. There are a number of things that you have to have a driver's license to do in the state, and not to include them makes criminals out of them and costs the state money.
Since George Bush came into his position as governor, we had passed a law that would provide for protection of farm workers when they were exposed to pesticides. When he became governor, he threatened to veto that protective legislation. We were able to overturn that and make sure that that protection continued for farm workers. But even then, the little protection that farm workers do in fact have against pesticide exposure, he was willing to take it away from them.
Houston is the center of the oil refinery industry and is the most polluted city in the country. The state of Texas ranks first in air pollution.
Oh, isn't it awful?
I think we can smell what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious that the air quality in Texas and certainly in the Houston region has not improved at all to where it needs to be. It doesn't look like we're going to meet the Clean Air Act mandates when we're supposed to meet them. And we've had, I think, 11 years of messing around, not making the changes that need to be made to improve the air quality.
In Texas, we have over 1,000 plants that still do not have environmental protection of clean air, meeting the Clean Air Act, because they were grandfathered 30 years ago.
And now we have voluntary standards. So these guys who have not done anything in 25 years since we put in the Environmental Protection Act, we now hope will volunteer to do something they haven't done. And they were very appreciative. They've all given him a ton of money.
The first appointment he made to the Environmental Protection Agency in Texas was the former executive of Dow Chemical.
The oil industry and the petrochemical industry does not want any harsh regulations on how much emission they can spew out of those plants, and he has been their water boy on that.
This last session, I attempted to bring all those companies into environmental regulation so that we don't have kids in Texas dying of asthma. George Bush fought that tooth and nail.
So many places don't remember where I've been. No faces I recall, no one there to blame at all.
Our last stop, Dallas. Here we wanted to get a feel for the concerns of voters in a working-class neighborhood.
In a lot of places of Chicanos and Latinos, a lot of them immigrant that are not familiar with our systems. So here in Texas, what's not happened so far, there has been nobody reaching out to those new citizens. And that's what we're doing, because there's a lot of them out there. And we're doing that to go and register them to vote and then educate them about the voting process.
In the last national election, 90 million people didn't vote.
There's a great impetus among the immigrant community to get out and vote, because you have mixed status families. You have citizen children, possibly undocumented parents who are constantly under fear of deportation. You have a spouse who can't get the residency for their spouse.
People that can vote want to vote, and they're glad that we're there.
Why don't we go get the job done?
Let's go get them. Right. Okay, here's 2 precincts that are majority Latino. Very few people were actually registered. And what we found is that we have registered almost as many people as were already registered.
That's fantastic. So you're doubling the voting electorate.
In these precincts,
That's
right.
Fantastic. Hi.
We're trying to get people to help volunteer that have already registered. ¿Quieres ayudar a levantar la gente para las elecciones aquí en el barrio? ¿Sí? Oh, okay. Qué bueno. Let me get your name and phone number.
Can I ask one question? How long have you been registered to vote?
Since I was 18.
Why did you register to vote when you were 18?
I want to make a difference, be part of, somebody who votes and is responsible.
Can you give us your impression of Governor Bush?
My impression is that he thinks that just because he speaks Spanish, that me as a Hispanic, I should vote for him. I just think it's just him using the language is just like a gimmick for us to vote for him. But like they say, actions speak louder than words.
Now, you're an elected official yourself. What are you elected to?
I'm trustee of the Dallas County Community College District. By my being on the board, we've allocated more funds to advertise and market in that community. Therefore, we've had a 39% increase of students that are Hispanic. And we also have made a policy change where we'll accept students that are undocumented if they can prove they've lived in the county for the past 12 months. So that's real exciting.
That is a tremendous victory. How important is it for working people to be elected to office?
Well, very important, because we're the ones that live the consequences of these laws that right now are being passed for the special interest.
Under the previous Bush administration, the people at the bottom got poorer. when people in neighborhoods like this didn't even have good streets, some people don't even have plumbing. Mm-hmm. And yet Governor Bush wanted to give money back because we didn't need it. Well, he didn't need it and his friends didn't need it, but the poorest of the poor needed it. This is class warfare to get the vote out there and to be involved in politics. Some people are like, well, the candidates aren't good enough. Okay, maybe there's not as much of a difference as we would like, but the difference is so great. Anybody want to register to vote?
I've already registered.
All right.
With the post office.
Great. You want to be in part of our Get Out the Vote campaign? Where we call people and say, let's go vote?
I work 12 hours. I work 12 hours a day and I'm just getting home, so and then I have to come home and babysit 2 kids.
Yeah. You want to say anything about George Bush?
I won't vote for him, so there's a -1 for him.
All of my life, I've been so slow to arrive at the things that most matter to me.
You cannot overlook the children of Texas. You cannot pass the people on the streets, the deprived people. And he says that there is no hunger in Texas. Well, again, he came from a family that he missed no meals.
All of my life, I've been so slow to arrive at that most matter to me.
I certainly hope that people will get out and vote, and I hope that people will pay attention to who cares about them.
He says that he's a compassionate conservative. He's half right. He's conservative.
A president of a nation such as ours should be a compassionate, hands-on people person. And if they're not, they certainly don't deserve that job.
So we're real concerned about what's happened in Texas, and we're concerned that the same might continue to happen nationally.
We know the guy, and we know what he stands for, who his friends are, what kinds of decisions he's likely to make.
He needs to be back here in Texas for 2 more years taking care of Texas's problems that he's left behind.
We need somebody who can relate to the people. Hello. Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, I think that we have got enough for a feature-length film.
Everybody sing. Waltz across Texas with you in my arms. Waltz across Texas with you. Like a storybook ending, I'm lost in your charms. I could waltz across Texas with you.
My flowers!
They're beautiful.
Thank you.